The dust swirled around her worn boots as she stood before the pawnbroker's window, her fingers trembling around the thin gold band that had once meant everything to her. Delilah Norton pressed her forehead against the hot glass, feeling the Texas sun beat down mercilessly on her shoulders. Sweet water in the summer of 1881 showed no mercy to anyone, least of all a widow with 3 children and a failing ranch. The town sprawled before her in shades of brown and beige, buildings weathered by wind and time, horses tied to hitching posts along the main street swishing their tails against persistent flies. Through the window, she could see Mr. Henderson sorting through various items people had traded for cash, his spectacles sliding down his nose as he worked. She had walked the 2 miles into town with the ring tucked inside her dress pocket, her heart heavy with each step. Thomas had slipped it onto her finger 7 years ago under a cottonwood tree by the creek, promising her a life of love and stability. He had kept that promise until a rattlesnake bite took him 6 months past, leaving her with Emily, Jacob, and little Sarah to raise on her own. The ranch was failing without Thomas's steady hand. The cattle were dying from disease, and the bank in town had already sent 2 letters about the mortgage payment she could not make. Delilah took a breath and pushed open the door, a small bell chiming overhead to announce her presence. Mr. Henderson looked up, recognition crossing his weathered face. "Mrs. Norton," he greeted, his tone cautious. "What brings you in today?" She approached the counter, her hand reaching into her pocket. The ring felt impossibly heavy as she pulled it out and placed it on the scarred wooden surface between them. "I need to sell this." Mr. Henderson picked up the ring, holding it to the light, his expression softened with sympathy. "Your wedding band, madam?" "Yes." The word came out as barely a whisper. She cleared her throat and tried again, stronger this time. "Yes, how much can you give me for it?" He examined it carefully, turning it over in his fingers. "It is a nice piece, but small, simple. I could give you $12 for it." $12. It would not be enough to save the ranch, but it would buy food for her children for a few weeks, perhaps pay for the medicine Sarah needed for her persistent cough. Delilah felt tears prick at her eyes but refused to let them fall. She had cried enough these past 6 months. 15, she countered, her voice steadier than she felt. 13 is the best I can do, Mrs. Norton. I am sorry. The bell above the door chimed again, and Delilah turned to see a tall man enter, his silhouette framed by the bright sunlight outside. He removed his hat, revealing dark hair and eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. His clothes marked him as a cowboy, well worn but clean, and he carried himself with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin. "Mr. Quinn," Henderson greeted. "I will be with you in a moment." The cowboy nodded, moving to browse the items displayed along the far wall, giving them privacy. Delilah turned back to the pawnbroker. 13, then, she agreed, her heart breaking as she spoke the words. Henderson pulled out his cash box, counting out the bills carefully. Delilah watched, feeling as though she was watching from a great distance, disconnected from her own body. This was really happening. She was really selling the last physical reminder of Thomas's love. "Actually," a voice said from behind her, "I will give you $20 for it." Delilah spun around to find the cowboy standing closer now, his hat in his hands. Up close, she could see he was perhaps 30 years old, with sun-weathered skin and kind eyes that crinkled at the corners. "Excuse me," she managed. "The ring," he said, gesturing toward where it still sat on the counter. "I will buy it from you for $20 if you are willing to sell it to me instead." Henderson frowned. "Now see here, Quinn, that is not how this works." "Sure it is," the cowboy replied evenly. "The lady has not completed her transaction with you yet. I am simply making her a better offer." He looked at Delilah. "That is, if you will accept it, madam." Delilah stared at him, trying to understand what was happening. "Why would you want to buy a woman's wedding ring?" Something flickered across his face, too quick to read. "I have my reasons. Do you accept?" $20 was significantly more than 13. Her children needed food, medicine, clothes. Her pride seemed a small thing to sacrifice for their well-being. "Yes, yes, I accept." The cowboy pulled out his wallet and counted out $20 in bills, placing them on the counter. Delilah reached for them with shaking hands, folding them carefully and tucking them into her pocket where the ring had rested moments before. The weight was different, the feel foreign. Paper instead of gold, practical instead of precious. "Thank you," she whispered. He picked up the ring, examining it briefly before closing his hand around it. "You are welcome, Mrs. Norton. Delilah Norton." "Russell Quinn," he introduced himself. "I am sorry for your loss." She blinked in surprise. "How did you know?" "A woman does not sell her wedding ring unless she has no other choice," he said gently. "And you have the look of recent grief about you. I apologize if I am overstepping." "No, you are right." Delilah found herself studying him more closely. There was something genuine in his manner, something that made her want to trust him despite having just met. "My husband died 6 months ago." Russell nodded slowly. "That is a heavy burden to bear. Do you have family to help you?" "3 children. The ranch is failing." She did not know why she was telling this stranger her troubles, but the words kept coming. "I do not know how much longer we can hold on." "What kind of ranch?" "Cattle. We have about 50 head left, but disease took a dozen this spring, and I cannot afford to hire hands to help with the work." "My oldest is only 6. Henderson had been watching this exchange with undisguised curiosity, but now he cleared his throat. "If you folks are done, I have business to attend to." Russell smiled slightly. "Actually, Henderson, I came in to see if you had any decent rope. Mine frayed through yesterday." As the pawnbroker moved to check his inventory, Russell turned back to Delilah. "Mrs. Norton, would you allow me to buy you a cup of coffee at the restaurant across the street? I would like to discuss something with you if you have the time." Every instinct told her to refuse, to take her money and return home to her children. She had left them with Martha Henderson, the pawnbroker's wife, promising to return within the hour. But something in Russell Quinn's steady gaze made her pause. "I suppose I could spare a few minutes," she said finally. The restaurant was quiet in the mid-afternoon lull, just 2 other patrons sitting at the far end sipping coffee. Russell held the door for Delilah and gestured to a table by the window. The owner, a stout woman named Agnes, brought them coffee without being asked, clearly recognizing both of them. "I heard about Thomas," Agnes said to Delilah, her voice softening. "He was a good man. I am truly sorry." "Thank you," Delilah replied, wrapping her hands around the warm cup even though the day was sweltering. When Agnes returned to the kitchen, Russell leaned forward slightly. "I want to be direct with you, Mrs. Norton, because I sense you are not a woman who appreciates having her time wasted." "That would be correct. I am looking for work. I have been drifting since I left my family's ranch in Oklahoma 5 years ago, working here and there, never staying long in one place. But I am tired of drifting. I want to settle somewhere, build something." He paused, taking a sip of his coffee. "I heard in the saloon last night that the Norton Ranch was struggling. I would like to offer my services." Delilah felt her defenses rise immediately. "I cannot afford to pay ranch hands, Mr. Quinn. That is why I was selling my ring." "I am not asking for pay," he said. "Not money, anyway. I am asking for a chance to prove myself. Let me work your ranch, help you get it back on its feet. In exchange, you provide room and board. If after a month you are not satisfied with my work, I will leave with no hard feelings." But if the ranch starts to prosper, we can discuss a more permanent arrangement. Perhaps I could earn a stake in the operation eventually." "That is absurd," Delilah said flatly. "Why would you work for free? I told you I want to build something. I am good with cattle, good with horses, good with repairs. I know ranching inside and out. Your place is small enough that one experienced hand could make a real difference, especially with the heavy work you cannot do yourself." He met her eyes steadily. "I am offering because I need a place to belong as much as you need help keeping yours. You could go to any ranch in Texas and get paying work." "I could," he agreed, "but most ranches already have full crews. I would just be another drifter passing through. This way, I have a chance to actually build something real." Delilah studied him, trying to find the catch, the hidden angle. Men did not simply offer to work for free out of the goodness of their hearts. "What are you running from, Mr. Quinn?" He smiled faintly. "Nothing illegal, I promise you. I left home after my father and I had a disagreement about the way he ran things. I was young and prideful, thought I knew better. By the time I realized I was wrong, too much time had passed, too much pride on both sides. So I kept moving, kept working, but never found a place that felt like home again." He rotated his coffee cup slowly. "I am not running from anything, Mrs. Norton. I am looking for something, a place to belong, a purpose. And you think you will find that at a failing ranch with a widow and 3 children. I think I might find it helping someone who needs help, making a real difference instead of just drawing wages and moving on." Delilah wanted to refuse. Every reasonable bone in her body told her this was a terrible idea. She did not know this man. Bringing a stranger to live on her property with her children was dangerous and foolish. But she looked down at the $20 in her pocket, felt the weight of the empty space where her ring had been, and thought about the cattle dying and the mortgage payment due, and Sarah's cough that would not go away. "I need to think about it," she said finally. "Of course, I understand." Russell pulled out a small piece of paper and a pencil, writing something down. "I am staying at the boarding house on 2nd Street, room 4. If you decide you want to take me up on my offer, you can leave word there. If not, I wish you all the best, Mrs. Norton, truly." He stood, placed a few coins on the table for the coffee, and settled his hat back on his head. "And Mrs. Norton, one more thing." "Yes." He reached into his pocket and pulled out her wedding ring, placing it gently on the table in front of her. "This belongs with you, not in my pocket. Consider the $20 a gift or a loan if that sits better with you. But either way, you should keep this." Before she could respond, he was gone, the door closing softly behind him. Delilah stared at the ring, her heart hammering in her chest. She picked it up with trembling fingers, feeling the familiar weight of it, the warmth from where it had rested in his pocket. The gold caught the afternoon light streaming through the window, creating small spots of brightness on the table. Agnes emerged from the kitchen, taking in the scene. "That Russell Quinn is a good man," she said quietly. "He helped my son fix our roof last week, would not take a penny for it, said he was happy to help." Delilah slipped the ring back onto her finger, feeling it settle into the groove it had worn over 7 years of marriage. It felt right there, felt like coming home. But the $20 in her pocket felt like possibility, like hope, like maybe things could get better. She stood, thanked Agnes for the coffee, and walked out into the bright Texas afternoon. She had children to get home to, a decision to make, and a future that suddenly seemed less bleak than it had that morning. The walk back to the Henderson house took her past the boarding house on 2nd Street. She paused, looking up at the second-floor windows, wondering which one belonged to room 4. A curtain twitched, and for a moment she thought she saw Russell looking down at her, but when she blinked the window was empty again. Martha Henderson had kept the children entertained with cookies and stories, and they ran to Delilah when she arrived, Emily chattering about the cat they had played with, Jacob showing off a small wooden horse Mr. Henderson had let him keep. Sarah clung to her skirts, coughing softly into her hand. "Did you get what you needed?" Martha asked quietly while the children were distracted. Delilah touched the ring on her finger, feeling the solid reality of it. "Yes and no. I need to think some things through." "Well, you know where to find me if you need to talk. Women supporting women, that is how we survive out here." The ride back to the ranch in their old wagon gave Delilah time to think. The children sang songs in the back, their voices carrying over the sound of the wheels crunching on the dirt road. The sun was beginning its descent toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. This land was beautiful, even in its harshness. She and Thomas had built something here, created a home and a life. She could not let it slip away without a fight, but fighting meant accepting help. It meant trusting a stranger. It meant taking a risk that could end very badly. By the time they reached the ranch, Delilah had made her decision. She got the children fed and into bed, kissing each of them good night and lingering longest with Sarah, whose forehead felt warm to the touch. She needed to get the doctor out to see her soon, but doctors cost money. The $20 would help, but it would not last long. The next morning, after getting the children their breakfast and starting them on their lessons, Delilah hitched the wagon again and drove back into town. She went straight to the boarding house and asked the proprietor, an elderly man named Mr. Davis, if he would deliver a message to Russell Quinn in room 4. "Just tell him Mrs. Norton accepts his offer. He can come out to the ranch tomorrow morning if he is still interested." Mr. Davis nodded, making a note. "I will let him know as soon as he returns. He went out to the Johnson ranch this morning to help them with a difficult foaling." Of course he did, Delilah thought. Agnes had been right. Russell Quinn did seem to have a habit of helping people. She made one more stop before heading home, at the general store to buy the supplies her family desperately needed. The $20 stretched further than 13 would have, but she was still careful with every purchase, weighing necessity against want. Flour, beans, coffee, salt, sugar, a little bit of hard candy for the children, and the medicine the doctor had recommended for Sarah's cough. She had enough left over to make a small payment to the bank, buying herself a bit more time. Russell Quinn arrived at the ranch just after dawn the next morning, riding a sturdy bay gelding and leading a pack horse loaded with his belongings. Delilah watched him approach from the porch, coffee cup in hand, trying to calm her nerves. She had barely slept, second-guessing her decision 100 times in the dark hours of the night. He dismounted at the hitching post, removing his hat. "Good morning, Mrs. Norton. Thank you for taking a chance on me. You can call me Delilah," she said, setting down her cup. "If you are going to be living here, we might as well skip the formalities." "Delilah, then, and I am Russell." He glanced around, taking in the property with an assessing eye. "Why do not you show me around? Let me see what we are working with." She led him through the property, pointing out the barn that needed repairs, the fence that was falling down in places, the cattle scattered across the grazing land. He asked intelligent questions, took mental notes, occasionally jotting something down in a small notebook he pulled from his pocket. When they reached the far pasture where several cows stood separated from the rest, he immediately noticed something was wrong. "Those 3 have symptoms of Texas fever," he said, pointing. "See how listless they are, the way that one is favoring her left side." "Thomas always handled the cattle health," Delilah admitted. "I know enough to feed them and move them to fresh grazing, but I do not know how to treat diseases." "That is all right. That is what I am here for." Russell studied the sick cattle thoughtfully. We need to isolate them completely from the healthy stock. Texas fever spreads through ticks. We will need to burn the grass in their current area and keep the healthy cattle away until we can be sure there is no contamination. Will the sick ones die? Possibly. But if we act fast, we might save them. More importantly, we can prevent the disease from spreading to the rest of the herd. They spent the morning working together, Russell directing as they moved the sick cattle to a small, isolated pen near the far end of the property. He worked with calm efficiency, handling the animals with gentle confidence. Delilah found herself watching him when she thought he was not looking, noticing the way he spoke softly to the cattle, the way his hands were both strong and careful. By midday, the children had noticed the stranger and come to investigate. Emily, ever bold, marched right up to Russell and demanded to know who he was. "I am Russell," he said, crouching down to her level. "I am going to be helping your mother with the ranch. What is your name?" "Emily Norton, and I am 6 years old. That is Jacob, he is 4, and that is Sarah. She is only 2 and she coughs all the time." "Emily," Delilah chided gently, "that is not polite," but Russell just smiled. "It is nice to meet all of you. I hope we will be friends." Jacob, shyer than his sister, stayed partly hidden behind Delilah's skirts. Sarah coughed into her hand, watching Russell with wide eyes. He did not seem bothered by any of it, just gave them all a friendly nod and went back to work on the fence he had been repairing. "Can I help?" Emily asked. "If your mother says it is all right, you can hand me nails from that bucket there, but you have to be very careful not to step on any of the sharp ones that might have fallen." Emily looked up at Delilah with pleading eyes. "Can I, Mama, please?" "You may, but you listen to Mr. Russell and do exactly what he says. And if he tells you to go back to the house, you do it immediately. Understood?" "Yes, Mama." Watching Emily carefully hand Russell nails one at a time, her face serious with concentration, Delilah felt something shift in her chest. The children had been so somber since Thomas died, carrying grief they were too young to fully understand. Seeing Emily smile again, even for something as simple as helping with fence repairs, made Delilah's decision feel a little less terrifying. That night, after the children were in bed, Delilah showed Russell to the small room off the barn that Thomas had used for storage. It was not much, just 4 walls and a window, but it had a bed and a chair and a small table. "I know it is not fancy," she said, feeling suddenly embarrassed by how little she had to offer. "It is perfect," Russell said sincerely. "I have slept in far worse places, believe me. This is luxury compared to some of the bunkhouses I have stayed in. I will bring you blankets and a pillow. Supper is at 6, breakfast at dawn. I expect you to eat with us. You are not hired help, you are." She trailed off, not sure what to call him. "A partner, hopefully," he finished. "Someone invested in making this place succeed." "Yes, that." She hesitated, then added, "Thank you, Russell, for the ring, for all of this. I know I have not said it properly, but I am grateful. You do not need to thank me. I meant what I said. I am here because I want to be, because this feels right. Now you should get some sleep. We have a lot of work ahead of us tomorrow." The days fell into a rhythm after that. Russell rose before dawn and often worked until well after dark, tackling the 100 small tasks that had been piling up since Thomas's death. He repaired the barn roof, fixed the well pump, reinforced the fences, tended to the sick cattle with patient dedication. 2 of the 3 survived, which Russell proclaimed a victory. Delilah found herself drawn to the barn more often than necessary, bringing Russell water or coffee, checking on his progress. They talked as they worked, sharing stories about their lives. She learned that he had grown up in Oklahoma, the youngest of 4 boys, on a ranch twice the size of hers. He had loved it fiercely, But his father had firm ideas about how things should be done, and no patience for a son who questioned those methods. I was too young and too stubborn to see that he was usually right, Russell admitted one afternoon as they worked together to clear rocks from one of the fields. I thought I knew better, thought the old ways were holding us back. We fought about everything. Finally, I told him I was leaving, thinking he would ask me to stay. He did not. Just nodded and said I would always have a home there when I was ready to come back. But you never did. Pride is a powerful thing. By the time I realized what a fool I had been, 2 years had passed. I wrote him a letter, but he never answered. I do not know if he never got it or if he just did not want to respond. I told myself I would go back in person someday, but someday kept getting pushed further away. It is not too late, Delilah said softly. I am sure your father would welcome you home. Russell was quiet for a long moment, loading another rock into the wheelbarrow. Maybe, but I think this is where I need to be right now. This feels like the right place. Delilah felt her cheeks warm and looked away, focusing intently on the rocks at her feet. Over the past 3 weeks, she had become increasingly aware of Russell in ways that had nothing to do with his skills as a ranch hand. The way his shirt stretched across his shoulders when he lifted something heavy. The sound of his laugh when Emily told him a silly story. The gentle patience he showed Jacob, who had started following him around like a shadow, slowly coming out of his shell. It felt like a betrayal of Thomas's memory, these feelings stirring inside her. Her husband had been dead only 8 months. What kind of woman thought about another man so soon? But late at night, alone in the bed she had shared with Thomas, Delilah could not help but remember the way Russell had looked at her that morning when she had come out to the barn early and found him already at work. The way his eyes had lingered on her face, soft and warm, before he had quickly looked away and started talking about the day's tasks. She was not the only one feeling this pull between them. She was sure of it. The first real test came on a hot afternoon in late July, when 3 men rode onto the property unannounced. Delilah was in the garden with Sarah when she heard the horses, and her heart immediately began to race. Russell was out checking the north fence line, too far away to hear or help. The men dismounted at the house, and Delilah recognized the one in front as Frank Dalton, the son of the banker who held her mortgage. He was 25, unmarried, and had made his interest in Delilah uncomfortably clear on several occasions. Mrs. Norton, he said, removing his hat with exaggerated politeness. Lovely to see you as always. Mr. Dalton, I was not expecting you. My father sent me to check on the property. We have not received your last 2 mortgage payments, and he wanted to ensure the ranch was still operational. I made a partial payment 3 weeks ago, Delilah said, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. She scooped Sarah up, holding her daughter close. Partial being the operative word. The agreement was for full payments, Mrs. Norton. My father is beginning to wonder if perhaps this is too much for you to handle on your own. A ranch is difficult work, even for a man, for a woman alone with small children. He let the sentence hang, his meaning clear. I am not alone, Delilah said, lifting her chin. I have hired help now. The ranch is doing better. Frank looked around pointedly. I do not see any help. He is checking the fences. Frank's expression darkened. You hired a man to work here, to live here. That is none of your concern, Mr. Dalton. I think it is very much my concern. A widow living alone with a strange man. People will talk, Mrs. Norton. Your reputation will suffer. My reputation will be fine, thank you. And Russell is not a stranger. He is a... She paused, searching for the right word. He is a business partner. He is helping me save the ranch. Russell. Frank stepped closer, too close, invading her space. You call your hired hand by his first name, how cozy. Before Delilah could respond, a voice cut through the tension. "Is there a problem here?" Russell walked around the corner of the house, leading his horse. His expression was calm, but Delilah could see the steel in his eyes as he assessed the situation. He tied his horse and walked over, positioning himself slightly in front of Delilah and Sarah. "And who are you?" Frank demanded. "Russell Quinn. I am working here. Who are you?" "Frank Dalton. My father owns the bank that holds the mortgage on this property." Frank looked Russell up and down dismissively. "I came to discuss business with Mrs. Norton." "Then discuss it," Russell said evenly, "but take a step back while you do. You are standing too close." Frank's companions tensed, hands moving toward their gun belts. Russell did not move, did not even blink, but something in his posture changed. Suddenly he looked dangerous, like a man who knew how to handle himself in a fight and was not particularly worried about 3 against 1. "Are you threatening me?" Frank asked incredulously. "No. I am asking you politely to give the lady some space. If that becomes a threat depends entirely on whether you are smart enough to take the polite request." For a long moment, nobody moved. Sarah whimpered softly, and Delilah held her tighter, her heart hammering so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Then Frank laughed, but it sounded forced. "I came here to conduct business, not to brawl in the yard. Mrs. Norton, my father expects the full payment by the end of next month. If you cannot make it, he will have no choice but to begin foreclosure proceedings. I suggest you think very carefully about your situation." He turned to his horse, then paused and looked back. "And Mrs. Norton, you might want to reconsider your living arrangements. A woman of good reputation does not live alone with a man who is not her husband. It gives people the wrong impression." They rode away in a cloud of dust, and Delilah felt her knees go weak with relief. Russell turned to her immediately, his expression concerned. "Are you all right? Did he hurt you?" "No, I am fine. He just startled me." She realized she was shaking and tried to stop, not wanting to appear weak. Russell gently took Sarah from her arms, settling the little girl on his hip with practiced ease. "Let us get you inside. You are pale." In the kitchen, he set Sarah down and poured Delilah a glass of water from the pitcher on the table. She drank it gratefully, her hand still trembling slightly. "Thank you," she said finally, "for stepping in. I do not know what would have happened if you had not arrived when you did." "I suspect you would have handled it just fine," Russell said, "but I am glad I was there anyway." "Who is Frank Dalton besides the banker's son?" Delilah sighed, setting down the glass. "He has been trying to court me since before Thomas died, actually. He saw Thomas was sick and started coming around, offering help, making it clear he would be interested in marrying me if I found myself alone. It made Thomas furious, but he was too weak to do anything about it. After Thomas died, Frank got more persistent. I have turned him down repeatedly, but he does not seem to hear it. And his father holds your mortgage." "Yes. I did not make the connection until after Thomas died and I went to discuss payment arrangements. Frank was there in the office, smiling like a cat who caught a mouse. He made it clear that if I married him, the mortgage would become a non-issue." Russell's jaw tightened. "So he is using financial pressure to try to force you into marriage. I think his father is in on it too. The bank has never been this aggressive about late payments before. Other ranchers have told me they were given much more time and flexibility when they struggled." "How much do you owe on the property?" Delilah told him the amount, and Russell let out a low whistle. "That is substantial, but not impossible. If we can get the herd healthy and sell some cattle at good prices, we might be able to make it work. The cattle sale is not until October. The payment is due end of August. Then we need to find another way to raise money fast." Russell thought for a moment. "What about selling some horses? Do you have any breeding stock?" Thomas had 3 good mares and a stallion, but I already sold the stallion to pay for his funeral and the first mortgage payment I missed. The mares are all I have left, and one of them is pregnant. We could sell one of the others if we had to, but let me think on this. There might be other options. Over the next week, Russell worked from dawn until well after dark, driving himself relentlessly. He rode into town and talked to the other ranchers, networking, building relationships, looking for opportunities. He came back with news that a ranch 50 miles north needed cattle driven to their property and was willing to pay well for the service. "It is hard work and will take me away for about 10 days, he told Delilah over supper. "But the pay would be enough to make your mortgage payment with some left over. I can take Jacob with me if you think he is ready. He is getting good with the horses, and it would do him good to feel like he is helping support the family." Jacob's face lit up with excitement, but Delilah felt a spike of fear. "He is only 4 years old, Russell. That is too dangerous." "He would be with me the entire time, and I would not let anything happen to him. I promise you that, Delilah. But you are his mother, so the decision is yours." Delilah looked at her son, saw the hope and eagerness in his young face. He had been so quiet and withdrawn since Thomas died, barely speaking some days. But since Russell had arrived, he had slowly started coming back to life, following the cowboy around, asking endless questions, soaking up the attention and guidance Russell patiently provided. "I want to go, Mama," Jacob said quietly. "I want to help. You would have to do everything Russell tells you without question or argument. It would not be an adventure, Jacob. It would be hard work." "I know, Mama. I can do hard work. Papa always said I was strong." The mention of Thomas made Delilah's eyes sting with tears. "Yes, he did say that. He was very proud of you." In the end, she agreed, though it took every ounce of courage she had to watch Russell and Jacob ride away at dawn 3 days later. Russell had spent the previous days preparing Jacob, teaching him about the route, what to expect, how to handle various situations. He had equipped the boy with proper gear and made sure he knew the rules. "I will bring him home safely," Russell promised Delilah as he mounted his horse. "You have my word." "I trust you," she said, and realized as she spoke that it was absolutely true. Somewhere in the past 6 weeks, Russell Quinn had earned her complete trust. The days without Russell felt strange and empty. Delilah had not realized how much his presence had become part of her daily routine until he was gone. She found herself looking up from her work to tell him something before remembering he was not there. The evenings were worst, when she would normally find him in the barn tending to some task or other, ready to talk through the day's events. Emily noticed too. "When is Russell coming back?" she asked every morning. "I miss him." "Soon, sweetheart. 10 days, he said." "That is forever," Emily complained. Sarah coughed into her hand, the sound worse than it had been. Delilah gave her more medicine and tried not to worry, but on the 7th day of Russell's absence, Sarah developed a high fever. Delilah hitched the wagon and drove into town, leaving Emily with Martha Henderson while she took Sarah to see Dr. Morrison. The doctor examined Sarah carefully, his expression grave. "Pneumonia," he said finally. "She needs rest, fluids, and this medicine 3 times a day. Keep her cool with wet cloths if the fever spikes. If she gets worse, you bring her straight back to me, understood?" "Yes, doctor, how much do I owe you?" $5 for the examination and 10 for the medicine. $15. Delilah felt sick. She had $22 left from the money Russell had given her for the ring, saved carefully for the mortgage payment. If she paid the doctor, she would only have 7 left. "Can I pay you 5 now and the rest later?" she asked, hating how small her voice sounded. Dr. Morrison looked at her with sympathy. "Mrs. Norton, I know times are hard. Tell you what, Pay me the 5 now and the rest when your cattle sell in October. Fair enough. Thank you, doctor. I will not forget this kindness. Russell and Jacob returned on the 10th day, tired and dusty but triumphant. Jacob talked nonstop about everything they had seen and done, his face animated in a way Delilah had not seen in months. Russell looked exhausted but satisfied, and he handed Delilah a pouch heavy with coins. Enough for the mortgage payment and some left over, he said. The work was hard, but the pay was good. Sarah has been sick, Delilah told him. Pneumonia. The doctor gave me medicine, but she has been struggling. Russell's expression immediately shifted to concern. Let me wash up and I will sit with her so you can rest. You look exhausted. I am all right, Delilah. He said her name softly with gentle insistence. Let me help. That is why I am here. She was too tired to argue. That night, after she had fallen into bed for a few hours of desperately needed sleep, she woke to find the house quiet. She checked Sarah's room and found Russell sitting in the rocking chair beside Sarah's bed, the little girl asleep in his arms. He was singing softly, a gentle tune Delilah did not recognize, his voice surprisingly good. You should be sleeping, she whispered from the doorway. He looked up, offering a tired smile. So should you, but Sarah was restless, and I thought you could use the rest more than I could. She has been sleeping peacefully for the past hour. Delilah crossed the room and gently felt Sarah's forehead. The fever had broken. Relief flooded through her so intensely she felt dizzy. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for everything, Russell. You do not need to keep thanking me. He carefully stood, settling Sarah back in her bed and tucking the blanket around her. In the dim light from the bedside lamp, his face looked softer, younger. I care about this family, about all of you. This is not just a job for me anymore, if it ever was. They stood close together in the small room, and Delilah found herself acutely aware of every inch between them. She could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes, could smell the faint scent of soap and leather that seemed to cling to him. Her heart beat faster. Russell, she started, not sure what she was going to say. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and gently touched her cheek. I know it has not been very long, he said quietly. I know you are still grieving your husband, and I do not want to rush you or make you uncomfortable. But I need you to know that my feelings for you go beyond friendship or partnership. I am falling in love with you, Delilah Norton. I think I have been since the moment I saw you in that pawn shop, trying so hard to be brave. Delilah closed her eyes, feeling tears slide down her cheeks. I feel it too, she whispered. I have been feeling it for weeks now, and it terrifies me. Thomas has only been gone 8 months. What kind of wife does that make me? It makes you human, Russell said gently, using his thumb to wipe away her tears. It makes you someone who has a big heart and a lot of love to give. Thomas was lucky to have you, and from everything you have told me about him, I think he would want you to be happy. He would want his children to have a father figure in their lives. You really think so? I do. But more importantly, what do you think? What do you want, Delilah? She opened her eyes and looked at him, this man who had appeared in her life when she needed help most desperately. He had given her back her wedding ring, had worked tirelessly to save her ranch, had been patient and kind with her children, had sat up all night holding her sick daughter. He had asked for nothing in return except a chance to belong somewhere. I want to stop feeling guilty for being happy when you are around, she said. I want to stop thinking I am betraying Thomas's memory by caring for you. I want. She hesitated, then made herself be brave. I want to see where these feelings lead, if you are willing to be patient with me. I will be as patient as you need me to be, Russell promised. He leaned forward slowly and pressed a gentle kiss to her forehead. We will take this at whatever pace feels right to you. They stood together in the quiet room, Sarah sleeping peacefully nearby, and Delilah felt something settle in her chest. She did not know what the future held, but for the first time since Thomas died, she felt genuinely hopeful. The next morning she rode into town alone and paid the full mortgage payment to the bank. Frank Dalton was there, and his face darkened when he saw the full amount. "How did you manage this?" he demanded. "My partner earned it," Delilah said calmly. "Russell took a cattle drive job. We are managing quite well now, actually. Please tell your father the October payment will be on time as well." "Your partner," Frank repeated with disdain. "You mean your hired hand?" "I mean my partner. Russell has a stake in the ranch now. We have formalized the arrangement." It was not quite true yet, but Delilah had decided that morning to make it true. Russell deserved it. "I see. And I suppose you have formalized other arrangements as well. My personal life is none of your business, Mr. Dalton. Good day." She left before he could respond, feeling powerful and capable in a way she had not felt in a long time. When she got home, she found Russell teaching Emily how to rope a fence post, his patient voice carrying across the yard. Jacob was practicing nearby, his throws wild but enthusiastic. Even Sarah was outside, sitting on a blanket in the shade, her color much better. Russell looked up when he heard the wagon, and his face broke into a genuine smile that made Delilah's heart skip. She smiled back, letting herself feel it fully without guilt. This was her life now. These were her people. This was her future, and it was going to be good. The summer turned to fall, and the ranch continued to improve under Russell's steady management. The cattle herd was healthy and growing, the fences were solid, the buildings were repaired. Russell had added a room to the barn for himself, a proper space with a door and a window and shelves for his belongings. He talked about eventually building a separate foreman's house, assuming this was going to be a long-term arrangement. Assuming. Delilah asked one evening as they sat on the porch after the children were in bed. It had become their routine, these quiet conversations in the twilight. "Well, I hope it is long-term," Russell amended. "But I know nothing is certain. If you ever want me to leave, I will go." "I do not want you to leave. Ever." Delilah reached over and took his hand, a gesture that had become natural between them over the past weeks. "I have been thinking we should make our partnership official, draw up papers, give you a real stake in this place. Half ownership, 50-50. Russell looked stunned. "Delilah, that is too much. I have only been here a few months." "A few months in which you saved this ranch from foreclosure and gave my children their happiness back. A few months in which you have worked harder than anyone has a right to expect. A few months in which you have become—" She paused, searching for the right words. "You have become essential to us, to me. This is your home, Russell. I want it to be official." He was quiet for a long moment, his thumb rubbing gentle circles on the back of her hand. "On one condition," he said finally. "What condition?" "That you let me court you properly. Not just as your business partner, but as a man who wants to build a life with you. I know we need to take things slow, and I respect that, but I want my intentions to be clear. I am here because this is where I want to be, and you are who I want to be with." Delilah felt her breath catch. People will talk. Frank Dalton was right about that much. A widow being courted so soon after her husband's death will cause gossip. Let them talk. Anyone who knows you are a woman of integrity, and anyone who does not know you does not matter. Russell shifted in his chair to face her more fully. "I love you, Delilah. I love your strength and your determination and the way you love your children fiercely. I love your laugh and the way you bite your lip when you are thinking hard about something. I love the life we are building here together. If you will let me court you, I promise to spend every day trying to make you happy." "You already make me happy," Delilah said, her voice thick with emotion. "You make me happier than I thought I would ever be again. Yes, Russell. Yes, you can court me. You can build a life with me. You can have all of it. He leaned forward and kissed her, soft and sweet and full of promise. Delilah kissed him back, letting herself feel the hope and joy and love that had been growing in her heart for months now. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "I should probably ask your children for their blessing," Russell said. "I do not want them to feel like I am trying to replace their father." "You could never replace Thomas," Delilah agreed, "but I think you have already carved out your own place in their hearts." She was right. When Russell sat down with the children the next morning and explained that he and their mother cared for each other very much and wanted to build a future together, Emily immediately threw her arms around him. "Does that mean you will stay forever?" she asked. "If your mother will have me, yes." "Forever. Good, I like you being here. You tell better bedtime stories than Mama does." "Hey now," Delilah protested with a laugh. "That is not very loyal of you." Jacob, more thoughtful than his sister, studied Russell seriously. "Papa would want us to be happy," he said finally. "I think he would like you. You are teaching me things he would have taught me if he was still here." "Your papa was a good man," Russell said gently. "I will never try to replace him in your hearts, but I hope there is room for me too." "There is," Jacob said simply and climbed into Russell's lap for a hug. Even little Sarah seemed to understand something special was happening. She toddled over and patted Russell's knee. "My Russell," she declared. "Yes, sweetheart, I am yours." Russell's eyes were suspiciously bright as he looked at Delilah over the children's heads. She felt tears running down her own cheeks, happy tears this time. They went to the lawyer in town the following week and drew up the partnership papers, making Russell a 50-50 owner in the ranch. They also filed a formal declaration of courtship with the county clerk, making their intentions a matter of public record. It was an old-fashioned gesture, but Russell insisted, wanting everything to be above board. The gossip did come, of course. Some of the more conservative women in town whispered behind their hands about how quickly Delilah had moved on. But most people, especially those who knew the family well, were supportive. Agnes at the restaurant made a point of telling Delilah she thought Russell was wonderful, and Martha Henderson threw a small party to celebrate the partnership. Frank Dalton, predictably, was furious. He confronted Russell in the street one afternoon, loud enough that half the town could hear. "You think you have won something here," Frank snarled. "You are just a drifter who got lucky. She will see through you eventually." "I think Delilah sees me quite clearly," Russell replied calmly. "And I think you need to accept that she has made her choice. Have some dignity, Frank, dignity." "You want to talk to me about dignity? You moved in on a grieving widow before her husband was even cold in the ground. That is enough." The steel was back in Russell's voice. "You can be angry at me all you want, but you will not speak about Delilah that way. If you have a problem with me, we can settle it like men, but leave her out of it." A crowd had gathered now, watching the confrontation with interest. Frank looked around, seemed to realize he was making a spectacle of himself, and backed down with ill grace. "This is not over," he muttered before stalking away. Russell watched him go, his expression troubled. When he got home that evening, he told Delilah about the encounter. "I do not trust him," Russell said. "He is angry and humiliated, and men like that can be dangerous. I want you to be careful when you are in town, especially if I am not with you." "Frank is all bluster," Delilah said, though she felt a shiver of unease. "He would not actually do anything. Maybe not, but let us be cautious anyway." October brought the cattle sale, and Russell's careful management of the herd paid off. They got excellent prices for their stock, more than enough to make the mortgage payment with a healthy amount left over for improvements and savings. Delilah felt like she could breathe fully for the first time in over a year. "We did it," she said to Russell as they drove home from the sale. "We actually saved the ranch." "You saved it," Russell corrected. "You were willing to do whatever it took, including selling your wedding ring." "I just helped." "You did more than help. You gave me hope when I had none left." She looked at the ring on her finger, the one he had bought, and returned to her. "This ring means something different to me now. It will always be a reminder of Thomas and the love we shared. But it is also a reminder of you and your kindness and how you came into our lives when we needed you most." "I needed you too," Russell said softly. "I was lost before I found you, drifting with no purpose, no home, no one who needed me. You gave me all of that." As winter approached, they settled into a comfortable rhythm as a family. Russell was careful to maintain propriety, keeping his own quarters in the barn and never doing anything that would compromise Delilah's reputation. But everyone in Sweetwater knew they were courting, and most people seemed to accept it as natural. On Christmas Eve, after the children were asleep with visions of the small gifts Delilah and Russell had managed to acquire for them, Russell asked Delilah to take a walk with him. The night was cold but clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds. He led her to the cottonwood tree by the creek, the same tree where she and Thomas had married 7 years before. Snow dusted the ground, and their breath made clouds in the frigid air. "I know this place is special to you," Russell said. "I know you married Thomas here. I want to be respectful of that, but I also want to make new memories here with you if you will let me." "What kind of memories?" Delilah asked, though her heart was already racing with anticipation. Russell pulled a small box from his pocket and dropped to one knee in the snow. "The kind that start with me asking you to be my wife. I know we have only been courting a few months, and if you want more time, I will wait as long as you need. But I love you, Delilah Norton. I love you with everything I am. I want to be a husband to you and a father to your children. I want to build this life we have started and make it permanent. Will you marry me?" He opened the box to reveal a simple gold band, engraved with a pattern of leaves and flowers. It was beautiful and understated and perfect. Delilah felt tears streaming down her face again. "Yes," she said, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Russell Quinn, I will marry you. I love you so much it scares me sometimes. I did not think I could feel this way again, but you showed me I could." "Yes." He stood and slipped the ring onto her right hand, leaving her left hand for Thomas's ring. "I thought you might want to wear both," he said, "to honor where you have been and where you are going." "That is perfect." She threw her arms around him and kissed him deeply, pouring all her love and gratitude and hope into it. He held her close, and for a long moment, they simply stood together under the stars, two people who had found each other when they both needed it most. They were married in March of 1882 in the small church in Sweetwater. Emily served as flower girl, dropping petals with solemn concentration. Jacob stood with Russell as his best man, so proud he practically glowed. Sarah sat with Martha Henderson in the front pew, occasionally waving at her mother and making everyone smile. Delilah wore a simple blue dress, Thomas's ring on her left hand and Russell's engagement ring on her right. When the Reverend asked if anyone objected to the union, there was a moment of tense silence. Frank Dalton was in attendance, sitting in the back with his arms crossed, but he said nothing. Russell exchanged vows with Delilah, his voice strong and sure, promising to love and honor her for all his days. At the reception at the restaurant, Agnes had outdone herself with food and decorations. The whole town turned out to celebrate, and if there were still a few whispers about the speed of the courtship, they were drowned out by the genuine good wishes of friends and neighbors. Russell danced with Delilah, then with Emily, then with a delighted Sarah, making each of them feel special and loved. Jacob, grown serious in his responsibility as best man, shook Russell's hand solemnly. "You will take care of them, right?" the 4-year-old asked earnestly. "With my life," Russell promised. "And you and I, we are partners now, men of the house together. I am counting on you to help me." Jacob nodded, satisfied, and ran off to play with the other children at the reception. That night, Russell moved his belongings from the barn to the main house, into the room Delilah had once shared with Thomas. She had spent the previous weeks redecorating, making it feel like a new space for a new beginning. Fresh curtains, new quilts, a vase of wildflowers on the dresser. "Are you sure about this?" Russell asked as they stood in the doorway together. "I do not want you to feel like I am erasing Thomas." "You are not erasing him. You are writing the next chapter. There is a difference." Delilah took his hand and led him into the room. "Thomas will always be part of my history, part of who I am. But you are my future, Russell. You are my now, and I am ready for that." Their first year of marriage was filled with hard work and quiet joy. The ranch continued to prosper under their joint management. Russell's instincts for business combined with Delilah's intimate knowledge of the property and its history created a powerful partnership. They expanded the herd, improved the breeding stock, and built a reputation for quality cattle. The children flourished. Emily started school in town and proved to be a bright student, always coming home with stories and new things she had learned. Jacob spent every spare moment working alongside Russell, learning everything he could about ranching. Sarah's health improved dramatically, her cough finally disappearing completely by her 3rd birthday. In the fall of 1882, Delilah discovered she was pregnant. She told Russell one evening as they sat on the porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. "I am going to have a baby," she said simply. Russell turned to her, his face lighting up with pure joy. "Truly, we are going to have a baby, we are. Dr. Morrison confirmed it this afternoon. I am about 3 months along, so the baby should arrive in late March." He pulled her into his arms, holding her carefully as if she was made of glass. "I cannot believe it. A baby, our baby." He pulled back to look at her, his eyes searching her face. "How do you feel? Are you happy?" "I am terrified and thrilled in equal measure," Delilah admitted. "It has been 3 years since I had Sarah, and I am not getting any younger. But yes, I am happy. So happy, Russell." "What about the other children? Have you told them yet?" "I wanted to tell you first. We can tell them together tonight." Emily was predictably excited, immediately declaring she would help take care of the baby and be the best big sister ever. Jacob seemed uncertain at first, asking if this meant Russell would not have time to teach him things anymore. Russell assured him that would never happen, that there would always be time for Jacob. Sarah, not quite understanding, mainly wanted to know when the baby would arrive and if it would play with her toys. As Delilah's pregnancy progressed, Russell became even more protective and attentive. He took over the heavier chores completely, often enlisting the children's help so they felt included while keeping Delilah from overdoing it. He read everything he could find about pregnancy and childbirth, wanting to be prepared for anything. "You are adorable when you worry," Delilah told him one evening, watching him pore over a medical text he had borrowed from Dr. Morrison. "I am not worrying, I am preparing. There is a difference. You are definitely worrying. I have done this 3 times before, remember." "I know what to expect." "But I do not," Russell said, looking up from his book. "I want to be helpful, not useless. I want to know what you need before you have to ask for it." She crossed the room and settled onto his lap, running her fingers through his hair. "What I need is for you to relax and trust that I will ask for help when I need it. You are already the most attentive husband in Texas. You do not need to do more." "I want to be a good father," he said quietly. "I want this child to know how much they are wanted and loved." This baby is going to be the most loved child in the world, with 3 siblings and 2 parents who adore them already. You are going to be an amazing father, Russell. You already are one to Emily and Jacob and Sarah. Their son was born on a warm evening in late March 1883, coming into the world with a lusty cry that announced his arrival to the whole household. Russell was there for the birth, holding Delilah's hand and offering support, amazed and humbled by the entire process. "A boy," Dr. Morrison announced, placing the squirming infant on Delilah's chest. "A healthy baby boy." Delilah looked down at her son, this perfect little person with a shock of dark hair and Russell's nose. "He is beautiful," she whispered. Russell leaned in close, his finger gently touching the baby's tiny hand. The infant immediately grasped it, holding on with surprising strength. "He is perfect," Russell said, his voice thick with emotion. "Absolutely perfect." They named him Thomas Russell Quinn, honoring both the father who had gone and the father who was here. Little Tommy, as they started calling him immediately, fit into the family as if he had always been there. Emily took her big sister duties very seriously, always wanting to help with feeding and changing. Jacob was fascinated by the baby, but a bit wary of holding something so small. Sarah thought he was the best toy she had ever been given, and had to be constantly reminded to be gentle. As Tommy grew from infant to toddler, the ranch continued to thrive. They built a second barn and expanded their operations, taking on 2 hired hands to help with the increased workload. Russell made sure to give them fair wages and good working conditions, remembering his own days as a drifter looking for decent work. The bank never bothered them again. With the ranch prosperous and the mortgage payments always made on time, even Frank Dalton's father had to admit defeat. Frank himself had moved to Dallas, reportedly to work in a larger bank there, and Delilah rarely thought of him anymore. On a spring afternoon in 1885, when Tommy was 2 years old and getting into everything with cheerful determination, Delilah found Russell in the barn repairing a saddle. She watched him work for a moment, appreciating the way the afternoon light slanted through the windows and highlighted the silver that was starting to appear in his hair. "You ever regret it?" she asked. He looked up, surprised. "Regret what? This life?" "Sometimes I think about that day in the pawn shop, how you were just passing through town. You could have kept drifting, kept looking for whatever it was you thought you needed. Instead, you ended up here, tied down to a family and a ranch and all the responsibilities that come with it. Do you ever wish you had made a different choice?" Russell set down the saddle and stood, crossing to her and taking her hands in his. "Not for a single second. Delilah, I was not looking for a place to drift to. I was looking for a place to stay. I was looking for a home, for a purpose, for people to love who would love me back. You gave me all of that." He smiled, that warm smile that still made her heart skip after all these years. "That day in the pawn shop, when I saw you trying to be so brave while your heart was breaking, something in me just knew. I knew you were why I had been wandering. I knew this was where I was supposed to be. You could not have known that after just seeing me for a few minutes. Maybe not logically, but my heart knew. And every day since has just confirmed it. This is my home. You are my home. This family, this ranch, this life we have built together, it is everything I ever wanted even when I did not know I wanted it." Delilah leaned into him, resting her head against his chest and listening to the steady beat of his heart. "I love you, Russell Quinn, more than I ever thought I could love someone again. I love you too, always and forever." They stood together in the quiet barn, the sounds of the ranch a comfortable backdrop, the sounds of their children playing outside drifting through the open door. This was happiness, Delilah thought. This moment, this man, this life. She had thought her chance at such joy had died with Thomas, but she had been wrong. Sometimes love got a second chance. Sometimes it arrived in the form of a cowboy buying a wedding ring and giving it back. The years continued to pass, each one bringing new challenges and new joys. Emily grew into a bright, confident young woman who wanted to be a teacher. They sent her to a proper school in Austin, and she came home on holidays full of stories and dreams. Jacob became Russell's right hand on the ranch, a natural cattleman with his father's patience and his mother's determination. Sarah's artistic nature led her to spend hours drawing and painting the landscape around them, capturing the beauty of Texas in charcoal and watercolor. Tommy grew up strong and curious, a perfect blend of both his parents. He had Russell's easygoing nature and Delilah's fierce independence, and he kept everyone on their toes with his endless energy and questions. In 1890, Dr. Morrison came to the ranch with news that he was retiring and moving to stay with his daughter in San Antonio. "I wanted to thank you," he told Delilah and Russell, "for being one of the families that made practicing medicine in Sweetwater worthwhile. I have watched your family grow and thrive, and it has been one of the joys of my career." "We should be thanking you," Delilah said. "You saved Sarah's life when she had pneumonia. You brought Tommy safely into this world. We owe you so much. You owe me nothing except to keep being happy." "That is all the payment I need." After he left, Russell pulled Delilah close. 10 years, he said. "It has been 10 years since I walked into that pawn shop and saw you standing there with your heart breaking." "The best 10 years of my life," Delilah said. "Well, after the first 7 with Thomas. But these past 10 with you have been extraordinary." "Here is to at least 50 more," Russell said, kissing her temple. And indeed, they had many more years together. They watched their children grow and marry and have children of their own. Emily became a beloved teacher in Sweetwater, marrying a fellow educator and having 3 children who called Delilah and Russell grandma and grandpa with equal affection. Jacob took over primary management of the ranch when Russell started to slow down in his 60s, running it with the same care and dedication Russell had shown. Sarah married an artist she met in Dallas and moved there, but visited often with her growing family. Tommy followed his own path, becoming a lawyer and settling in Houston, but he always came home for holidays. Delilah and Russell grew old together on the ranch they had saved and built into something prosperous and lasting. On warm evenings, they still sat on the porch watching the sunset, hands intertwined, comfortable in the silence of long companionship. "Do you remember that day?" Delilah asked one evening when they were both in their 70s. She did not need to specify which day. They both knew she meant the pawn shop. "Every detail," Russell confirmed. "You were wearing a blue dress. Your hands were shaking when you put the ring on the counter. Henderson offered you $12 and you countered with 15. I cannot believe you remember all that." "I remember because it was the day my life really began. Everything before that was just waiting to find you." Delilah smiled, looking down at her hands. She wore both rings still, Thomas's on her left hand and Russell's on her right. 2 loves, 2 chapters, one life filled with more joy than she had ever imagined possible. "I am glad you bought my ring that day," she said softly. "I am glad I gave it back," Russell replied. "Though I knew even then I would never really let you go." "You never did," she agreed. "And I never wanted you to." They sat together as the sun set over their land, over the life they had built together, over the family that had grown from that chance meeting in a pawn shop on a hot Texas day. Sometimes the best things in life came when you were at your lowest, when you thought all hope was lost. Sometimes love arrived in the form of a stranger with kind eyes and a generous heart. Sometimes a wedding ring sold was a wedding ring returned, and both symbolized different kinds of love that were equally precious. Delilah leaned her head on Russell's shoulder, feeling his arm come around her, still strong despite his years. This was her life. This was her love. This was her happily ever after, earned through hardship and faith, and the courage to accept help when it was offered. And it was more than she ever could have hoped for on that desperate day when she had walked into town planning to sell the last remnant of her first love, only to find her second love waiting for her there, ready to give her back not just a ring, but hope, purpose, and a future filled with joy. The end.